How would you describe your big idea or vision for the industry going forward?
Yeah, I think the book talks a lot about digital disruption and how the industry is
Mhm.
evolving. But if I were to have one big idea going forward, it's that the biggest disruption is yet to come. We haven't seen it yet. And that is maybe a bit overwhelming given what the restaurant industry has been through in the last year with the pandemic. But I think there's still a lot more change yet to come.
Hmm, interesting. Uh, so, do you feel it's the big disruption has to do with off-premise delivery? Is that
Well,
yeah?
Certainly one aspect. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Carl.
Mhm.
yeah, I think it is to do with off premise from the angle of the amount of disruption and change that's happening, Mark.
Mhm.
But it's really around just this concept of the digital restaurant and
Mhm.
just being wherever your customer is
Mhm.
and recognizing that because of these multiple channels that you can interact with your customer with in this day and age, you need to have a very different kind of business model. And whether that be the disruption through robotics or automation,
Mhm.
or just in the capabilities of being able to utilize customer data and the digital marketing engagements that come from it, I think we're going to find just restaurateurs becoming very, very different in their capability makeup than perhaps what they were in 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think when you look at disruption that's occurred in other industries, typically where it comes from is that the existing players have a existing business model to defend. And I'll take something as simple as all of the commodity and labor inflation that we've experienced recently that has led to a lot of price increases. And I don't think we should kid ourselves. Restaurants love inflationary environments, especially if they're able to pass the prices through to consumers. That's a great thing for them because they have a high fixed cost business, and that those fixed costs in the form of their leases, the restaurant build out, those are in yesterday's dollars. So if you've got a lot of inflation happening and the revenue coming in is at a higher price, that's a good thing for restaurants. And what that creates is, in my opinion, a relatively unstable environment where there's a big price umbrella. And in other industries, that's what's led to disruption. When you combine that with new business models, new ways of thinking, new technologies, new software, you could see a fundamentally different type of restaurant serving consumers in a very different way going forward, where they're actually able to do so more cheaply and possibly with much higher food quality, reinvesting a lot more of the consumer dollar in food. And when you look at the history of the restaurant industry itself, why did casual dining take off? It took off because it was more consistent, better quality at a cheaper price than an independent, full service restaurant. Why did fast casual then beat casual dining? Well, because it was able to offer really high quality food at an even lower price. And when we find whatever model it might be that's able to take all the innovations in ghost kitchens and virtual brands and automation and software and combine those into a new business model that enables that business model to deliver food to consumers at an even lower price, I think you're going to see just very quick uptake of that idea.
Mhm. All right. And one of the topics that you touched on in your book that I thought is very interesting uh, is the concept of translating hospitality into this new environment, this new digital environment of off-premise and delivery. Um, what are the keys to translating hospitality into this new environment?
Well, as part of our research for the book, I became a DoorDash driver, Mark, and it was great to be able to see the experience as part of the ecosystem, if you will, of what
Mhm.
off premise is like. And
Mhm.
the reason we did that was to demonstrate the fact that, in many ways, the gig driver, the DoorDash driver, the Uber Eats driver,
Mhm.
is for all intents and purposes the off premise server, and they're the ones that are taking the dish and place it in the metaphorical table at the front of a customer's door, if you will. And so I think for us, the idea of helping restaurateurs understand the driver perspective was particularly important because, in a way, it's about how do you help the drivers feel that they're part of the system? How do you create a system whereby you help them feel good about what they're doing and really recognize that the more journeys that they do, the more money they make. But then similarly, helping them identify with your restaurant, helping them understand why giving great service is good for the driver as well as the restaurant is actually a really good example of being able to demonstrate hospitality from a service standpoint. But as we know, things go wrong. We try to represent in the book the importance of quality, timeliness, and accuracy when it comes to operating a great off premise order. And so when we talk about that, we also say when things go wrong, how do you actually do something about it? Because it's really difficult to fix something when it's 15 minutes from the actual kitchen. And we reference the hospitality industry from the context of a hotel room. And we reference that in the book in the sense of when an order has an issue. Actually, in the MGM Grand, I think it was in Las Vegas, the kitchen team put a chocolate glazed strawberry on the dish to be able to say, look, we're sorry we're 10 minutes late, but here's a little token of our appreciation. That's hospitality. That can still be done in a digital context, and it certainly can be done in an off-premise context.
Mm-hmm. There's another great quote in the book from Carolyn Sizer of RSE Ventures, and she says that uh, the UX of that digital experience, whatever that customer experience is, has to replace all the functions of a traditional front of house. And Carl started doing some off-premise reviews where he walks through the consumer journey, uh, either doing takeout or delivery, all the way through from ordering to unboxing the food. And I think as you go through that journey, you can see different points, and he highlights different points where brands are either doing really well or frankly failing at conveying hospitality through a method other than a traditional server. And as consumers become more and more accustomed to and frankly demand more and more digital interfaces, they want a digital interface that still serves the same purposes that that front of house historically has.
Mm-hmm. All right. And can you talk a little bit about what some of the challenges are that the industry is going to have to overcome in order to achieve some more of these good user experiences through delivery and takeout?
Sure. Well, let's start. This will take about 2 hours, but we'll get through it, Mark. The challenges are many, but look, ultimately it comes down to what we're trying to achieve through the book, and that is a mindset change.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of change yet to come is actually still quite significant, and therefore having the right mindset to be able to develop a restaurant business model that has the agility to adapt is going to be critical. So I would start by saying that. The next piece is then recognizing you don't have to do it all overnight. It's about a learning journey, and it's okay to learn on that journey. And as we go through the book, we try to demonstrate some of those kind of principles and some of the best practices that we advocate from those that are indeed finding success through it. But all of them have said you need to experiment to overcome those challenges. And a lot of them are around how do I use customer data better? A lot of them are around how do I choose the right technology platform for my business better? And then it's really around the basics, the restaurant 101. How do I operate more effectively in this environment now, given the fact that there is now a number of different channels of how my customers are going to engage with me?
Mm-hmm. All right, and I'd like to go back to talk a little bit more about something that you mentioned earlier, and that is the relationship between restaurants and third-party delivery companies. How do you see that evolving over time? I know you talked a little bit about taking care of the drivers and making them feel a part of the brand, but how will that actual business relationship work out to the benefit of everyone?
Yeah, I think to some extent there's been a bit of a love-hate relationship between the restaurants and the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly the type of business that cannot exist without the consumer, without the driver, without the platform, and without the restaurant. All parties need to be present and benefit from the platforms in order to do well. And I think, the best restaurants out there have figured out how to combine both first-party experiences and third-party experiences. That is to say, ordering direct through their own website and ordering through these platforms to serve all different types of consumers on different types of occasions. It turns out some consumers really love ordering from the platforms, and they're never going to go over to your first party platform. And so figuring out how do you have a great business, no matter which way they choose to interact with you, I think is really important. The platforms on their part have evolved as well. They've introduced tiered pricing schemes. They offer white label delivery on the back end. Many of them will partner so that if you have in-house delivery, as a restaurant, you can supplement that with third-party delivery. And I think as those business models become more seamlessly integrated, you will see a much more positive relationship between the two.
Hmm. Great. And another area of interest to a lot of restaurant operators is the concept of virtual brands, and whether they're virtual delivery only brands that restaurants are incorporating into their own kitchens or operating out of ghost kitchens, perhaps. Um, and maybe some sort of other models in there, like cluster truck, where they're sort of the whole model themselves, the whole end-to-end models. What do you see as the future for those types of models?
Well, I think the reality is that these are going to be able to give customers far more choice.
Hmm.
We've referenced early on in the book the fact that customers are looking for more variety and choice to match their own specific need state and identity, if you will, in relationship to food. And I think for us, virtual brands give the restaurateur an opportunity to market niche food brands in a way that is far easier to be able to do than in a physical context. In fact, in many ways, a lot of the virtual brands that exist out there would never succeed if they were in a brick and mortar location because they are so niche. And now we live in a world where we're no longer constrained by the amount of tables and the turn times of those tables in a restaurant. And so therefore you're servicing a much larger catchment audience within the kind of 15 minutes radius of your restaurant. And understanding those niche tastes and understanding how you can complement your current core menu from your restaurant and actually be able to build on top of that without adding too much complexity is actually something that could really add far greater incremental value than just by maintaining one menu alone. So I think we're really excited about the prospect of virtual brands. I think it's still early days, but they have gone like gangbusters over the last year in particular, and the growth on them has just been very exciting, especially those that have celebrity endorsements behind them.
Hmm. All right. And talk a little bit more in the last few minutes here about the future of, I guess, maybe the physical operation of the restaurant itself. You talk about in the book the Delco restaurant format. What will the restaurant of 2030 look like, uh, given these trends?
So that's a great question. In many ways, Domino's Pizza was the original ghost kitchen.
Hmm.
And what they did in going slightly off Main and Main, putting a tiny footprint, having everything go out the door, takeout or delivery. Uh, many, many ways, that was the original ghost kitchen.
Hmm.
And I think you will see a lot of restaurants adopt that format where it just doesn't make sense to have a lot of seating or to have a lot of service. But I think you'll see the industry bifurcate a little bit. Carl and I are both huge fans of dining out. I don't think that dining in restaurant is ever going to go away. We are hugely social creatures. We love being around each other. We love the experience of eating out. So I think that will always be there. But as you have more restaurants go toward this Delco delivery carryout model, and some restaurants bifurcate and go the other way toward more dine-in, I think, we talk about in the book, seeing a much more sophisticated dine-in experience. Because if you're going to go out, it should be awesome.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the exciting things, quite honestly, Mark, is that we think the dining experience is going to get better. We're really excited about that. We think the experiential nature of a restaurant is going to only get better over the course of the next few years. That might come out through better service models. We think it's going to result in better food, better ingredients, because that's what, again, consumers are demanding. But I think that is something which we should all be excited about. Perhaps the visitation might drop a little bit as we see the Delco model develop more, but everyone should be really excited about eating out at restaurants still because the future is very rosy.
Well, terrific. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Unless you had anything else that you wanted to add, anything that we didn't hit on that you think is important that you'd like to mention?
Well, sure. Obviously, if your readers or listeners have yet to get a copy of the book, we'd love to be able to extend a discount to them using the code NRN20.
Oh,
If they go to deliverinthedigitalrestaurant.com, they'll be able to get a 20% discount on a hardback or a paperback book. And we would always welcome to hear from any of your listeners as to what they think of the book. And hopefully, it does exactly what we set out to do when we wrote it, and that is to help the restaurant industry come to terms with this change and to get excited about what's yet to come.
Yeah, we also have great news, which is that soon everyone will be able to listen to Carl read them the book in the
oh,
form of an audiobook, which I think
hmm
will be fantastic for the restaurant industry. So many busy hands don't always have time to sit down and read a book.
hmm Well, that's great to hear, and that's great that you're offering this discount because I read the book and I enjoyed it immensely, and I think it's got a ton of great information for the industry. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining me today.